Oh, conveniently, they also helped co-host today, the last couple of days. So thank you guys for co-hosting.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I know you have a video, so go to you. You want to do video first, or what's the video about?
Well, sure. We did 140 CUSE, which is Syracuse University's version of the 140 conference. And students, as I told you about yesterday, were involved from the beginning to the end of the production. And they're still with us involved today. So students put together a video clip that they wanted to share with you, the highlights of 140 CUSE. We have a great team that does a show called Warp Core, and so they hosted this clip, so we can show that now.
All right, please, let's roll the clip.
And as you know, last week was our 140 CUSE conference.
Woo! Yeah, it was. Round of sound for that.
You took a camera with you, didn't you?
I did take a camera with me, and this is what happened.
We need some of that power now. Ready to start? I didn't hear you. Are you ready to start? 140 CUSE!
You've worked for Cisco for 8 years.
I have, yes.
Are you yet to get sick of the thong song yet? And what do we have on your plate here today?
Well, right now I'm just getting started, but there's delicious turkey. These meatballs are some of the best meatballs.
Turkey, the Cadillac of birds. There's so many important people in here that have way more followers than I do.
I need to thank you all. You may be asking, why are you thanking us, Alexis? Well, you all were the very first university to actually take a stand against SOPA and PIPA. So for that, I give you a round of applause. Give yourselves a round of applause. Because that is awesome.
When you're influencing people, you're actually doing something. You're trying to change their behavior, and you're trying to force them into doing something. And when you're inspiring people, you're actually empowering people to do really amazing things on their own and out of their own goodness and their heart and their own creativity. So I always think it's way better for people to do things on their own than, me twisting your arm and saying, let's do whatever.
Most of us grew up and we heard this story growing up, that if you go to school, you get an education, then you'll get a good job, and then you'll be able to work that job until death do you part. So how many people know that that story does not quite exist today in the same format as it did maybe 10 or 20 years ago? Things have definitely changed.
I'd say you're the turkey of social media.
And that means that would be the Cadillac.
By transitive property, the Cadillac of social media.
Who's the Rolls Royce?
Mark Zuckerberg.
All right, that's
It was a good day. Back to you, me and Ricky.
And you're an idiot.
That is true.
Yeah. Wow. All right, wow. So what was the impact? Anthony, what was the impact of 140 CUSE at Syracuse, do you think?
Well, it had a tremendous impact. We had great attendance for 140 CUSE. We had 600 people in the audience. We had 15,000 viewers on our live stream. And what I think the real impact, though, was we reached all those people, but also I think we reached a lot of students who were just so motivated and empowered to use their skills. You saw Alyssa Henry doing backstage interviews there. Alyssa Henry just started as the social media strategist at CBS this week.
Wow.
And we were lucky to have the last few minutes of her at Syracuse, and she used all of her abilities to reach people that way. We had all the students doing the production backstage. We had students helping curate the speakers, reach out to the speakers. So we had them engage in wherever their strengths were, and sort of the energy in the room around that conference, I think, was the real impact of it.
Do you think there's a chance that in 2013 you guys might try doing something similar again?
I think there's a very strong chance of that. Also, I do want to say, I want to thank you, Jeff, for what you did with the students. We actually traveled to nearby schools. We got a bus, and we traveled around with Jeff in a bus. And
Jeff in a school bus. There's a theme there.
I said then, I'll say it now. The 2 days I spent with you guys was more fun than I had in college. So it was just really great energy. And I learned 2 songs, Call Me Maybe and Starships.
Yes. And I think the feeling was mutual. We had a great time, too. And I think we may be doing that again as well.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. And I think anyone who's watching in higher education, if you'd like to take the 140 concept to your school, we're open to the idea. And if you'd like to engage the iSchool in some ways to figure out how it could work, I would encourage you to have dialogue. And it was just so much fun. I want to switch over to Becky because she's been the source of so much stuff around here ever since that first conference. And
just feel free to take that one completely out of context.
you could, but you are the one that they licensed the term hybrid vigor.
Yes.
You were the one that helped bring out the fact of the specialness that we represent. You then, almost in a dare, while we were working on 140 Detroit, when Alan and I were working on that, while we were planning our road trip across the Midwest, you suggested that a small town conference should happen, and very quickly I said yes, didn't I?
Yes, that was actually, it was a conversation between me and Tykerman 1, Steve Tucker, and we discussed the fact that we needed to get Jeff outside of the big cities, that there is life and technology and interest outside of the big cities. And Tykerman 1 runs a corn farm in Nebraska and tweets from the tractor cab. So I'm telling you that there is life outside the big cities. And just this conversation between me and Steve Tucker, of course, we added Jeff and said, we need to get him out of the big city. And Jeff said, you figure it out and we'll do it. So we did it.
But did you expect such a quick yes?
I didn't expect such a quick yes, but I knew we could get you to do it.
There you go. And and for those of you, how many people here have visited Hutchinson, Kansas?
Where's my Hutchinson people? Yeah!
Yeah, all right. Those of you around the world not raising your hand, find a way to come to Hutchinson, either virtually or physically, on November 8th this year. Let me tell you, this small town has great treasures. Not only is there a space museum that's world class, certainly you would enjoy the space museum part. No, you would. That's actually at Apollo 12, Apollo 13, lunar module inside. There is salt mines. Anyone here ever been in a salt mine?
The Hutchinson people have been into the salt mine.
Yeah.
650 feet straight down into the salt mine.
And
that's where we hold one of our parties.
And it goes out to 150 miles into Oklahoma. It's where Hollywood historically has sent their films, because the temperature doesn't change from 69 degrees down there, and it's a very interesting place. There is, well, of course, my favorite moment was when I ended up doing a school bus race.
Don't look at me, I had nothing to do with that.
You haven't
lived
lived until you've actually drag raced a school bus on a dirt track, and Alan and I were getting a tour of the Fox Theater in Hutchinson, and it was a very fine day until our friend gets a Facebook message. Remember what happened?
Cody Heitschmidt decided that they needed to also go look at the Kansas State Fairgrounds, which are in Hutchinson, and that means that they were having school bus races that day, and they put Jeff Pulver, important visitor from out of town whom we should impress with our fine sophistication, wonderful qualities, and why you should come here to have a conference, and they put him in a used school bus, graffitied up, and said, y'all have a drag race, go for it.
And I was challenged on two levels. One, it's like, okay, I realize when you're driving a school bus, which I'd never driven before, you have a straightaway, but then you have these curves. And it's like, do you want to, because Cody was challenging me to a drag race. And it's like, do I want to win the race or do I want to survive this race? And I figured I wanted to survive. So I got up to 45 miles an hour on the straightaway, but when I got on the curve, it's like, do I want to tilt over the bus? So he lapped me. But there was video on YouTube where I'm saying, where Alan is sitting there, because I thought we were there just to videotape Cody participating, and it's like, I can't believe I'm in a school bus, and I'm driving. And this goes on for a minute and a half, and it's like,
Okay, people, the school bus races have nothing to do with the Small Town 140 conference. Okay.
But it was part of the culture of going in and feeling connected immediately, and I
think the coffee shop story is a better story of that, where they went for breakfast and they sit down in a coffee shop, and Jeff, you can see this in a background of a video where Alan is taping Cody Heitschmidt and they're talking about what a great town it is, and in the background you can see Jeff Pulver talking to a bunch of old farmers from Hutchinson. And you would think, to look at Jeff and to look at a bunch of guys that are from Hutchinson, that they wouldn't have anything in common. And it took them about 20 seconds for them to figure out that they were all ham radio geeks.
In fact, I asked them almost obnoxiously, but not really, in due respect, I asked them if they're on the internet, if they're on Facebook. And they said, no, we're on a much better network. They said, oh, what? I said, what? They said, we're ham operators.
And so he drops into CQ, and
I said I was WA2BOT.
You can see that moment happen in the background of the video as Jeff just lights up as he suddenly realizes they've made this connection. I promise you folks, if you have any connection to small town, if small towns mean something to you, come join us on November 8th. There's a link on the State of Now website. If you have any doubts, just talk to Jeff or to me online, and we will answer any question that you have.
It's just an incredible experience, and the other thing I must say was a lot of fun is driving the Midwest with Alan Weinkrantz. There's nothing like it.
There is nothing like that, I'm sure. I don't want to do
Well, we won't go there. So, Julia, what inspired you to take this to Ontario?
Well, you.
Oh, that's not fair.
Sure, it is fair. Jeff and I had been tweeting for a long time, and I was on a business trip actually, and Jeff tweeted me and said, well, you should come to 140 New York. And I had just started my business, and I said I would love to, but new business owner, they couldn't handle the expenses, and so Jeff invited me to come as his guest last year. So I came as his guest, and it happened within a week. A group of people in Waterloo, Ontario got together through Twitter and said, we need to bring this to Ontario. And we started to talk about bringing it to Waterloo, and then Jeff flew up to Waterloo and said, no, you need to think bigger. So then we thought bigger and brought it to Ontario and became the first 140 in Canada. It was an incredible experience for all involved.
And you have a next one coming up soon?
September 27th, yes.
That's right. It's also going to be in KW?
It's going to be in KW again, which was, it's great for our community. It's still probably a little bit bigger than the community you live in, Becky, but it's still, we live in the shadow of Toronto, which is the center of the universe in Canada. So a lot of people don't look at Waterloo as being a place where you might want to hold a conference that could change the world for people, but it has changed the viewpoint of how people look in Waterloo. And people in Toronto are quite amazed that first, that we could pull it off, and secondly, that people from Toronto wanted to come to it, that it had meaning beyond our community's borders.
And I have to say, a bunch of the speakers that you saw the last 2 days came from that conference. I was so taken back by the raw honesty of a group of people that maybe didn't know each other before, but they bonded on stage, and the whole connection it blew my mind, and it so reminded me of being in Hutch, and it so reminded me about just people being people, and people have stories to share. It doesn't matter where they're from; they're people first. And so I thought that was terrific, and I thank you for making 140 Conf Ontario happen. I know that we've run 140 also in Montreal, and we've done in other parts in New York and such, and. My idea had been, I was hoping to find someone to do a 140 in the Maritimes and in Vancouver, in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, because I want to do a 140 Canada, which would probably be in Toronto. But I wanted to bring in as legs like all the other ecosystem, because you do a Canadian event that's for Canada. I can't just make it an Ontario event, because that wouldn't be fair to Ontario or anyone else. I used to run a conference called Voice on the Net, or VON, and when I did VON Canada, I got attacked because I could not find the right city. Because when I did it in Toronto, the folks from Vancouver were yelling at me, and the folks from Montreal were yelling at me, and the folks from Ottawa were yelling at me. So I'm used to that. And in fact, I couldn't call it VON in Canada, because in Canada, VON is the Victorian Order of Nurses. So I got a cease and desist letter about my name. But I figured when we had momentum, it'd be fun to do something, because it's so much going on and so many great stories to be told. But I'll tell you, it's a lot of just the people you saw this morning. This not would have happened if it wasn't for the people, my friends, that I met in Canada, and it's really incredible, and I greatly appreciate every Canadian that came here and those watching, because lives are being touched, and you never know what happens when you start going down a path. Deb, I did not forget about you.
I know you didn't.
Now, you are actually, I think, of anyone who's taking the 140 to heart, you're the most active. Now, you ran the 140 Des Moines last year. I couldn't make it because I had pneumonia.
You Skyped in, though.
I did Skype in, but it's not the same thing. And then I think I had the most raw talk of my life on your stage.
That you did?
I talked about being me, which I'm very proud of. It's very revealing. And if you want to feel a good talk, just check out that talk. I'm really proud of that talk. But
it's on the homepage on your 140conf.com.
I know. I'm not that shy about it. But
I'll say it. It's very good.
But it was a very hard thing to do. It was a very hard talk to have. But you brought out these people. In fact, Liz.
Liz Need.
She was from there. And you discovered other people, too. And so there's something very special about your work. And so what are you doing now in Iowa with the conference?
Well, we've done 2 140 conferences in Des Moines, and out of this last one, we thought, wouldn't this be fun if we did something on a Friday afternoon from 2 to 5, did a little mini 140 with cocktails afterwards and a little networking. So we're going to do that with agriculture in August. We're
doing Aggie, yeah?
We're doing Ag in August in Ames. We're going to do education, I think in Spencer, Iowa in December between the holiday breaks. And we'll do business in Cedar Rapids in the spring.
Wow.
And I just heard today Kevin Honeycutt would
This
like
is in
to
very
do-
preliminary talks, but
We're talking about
we're
doing
going to try to
something in
piggyback on
Wichita.
an event that Kevin Honeycutt is doing in Wichita, Kansas, to do a mini 140 in Kansas for education specifically. So that's very preliminary, but we're going to try to get that done with his Podstock event.
And education's a big deal in the Midwest.
It's a big deal everywhere, right? I think it's everywhere.
And we're very excited about that. And you know, there'll be 15 speakers and maybe 100 attendees, and out of that we'll vet for the big event next May.
But I'll tell you, the one thing I got out of all this is that in our particular case, I don't think it's the number of people who are there that matter. Because I'll tell you, I mean, even this conference got me depressed for a long time because I don't want to cry.
The attendance was not what you had hoped. We'll just jump right in here and say that you had wanted more folks to fill up. I mean, there's a lot of seats here. A lot of people have watched this online, but we were just discussing the fact that for some people, the 140 conference is something you attend maybe once, and somebody just really knocks your socks off. Or you come 2 or 3 times, and you get a really good sense of how important. Was that a cutoff? Did you cut me off?
I'm telling you, Matthew, not to cut us off.
Okay.
End of the show.
People get a sense of what's important about this. The fact that the hybrid vigor thing, that what I can learn from an independent musician that I can apply in my liquor store. That concept, I mean, it takes maybe 1 or 2 or 3 for some people to feel that they've really felt fulfilled by that. And then they may not come back to a 140. And then other people go insane and they start putting on dozens of 140 in their community, or they go to 10 of them around the world because they just have a mental issue, apparently. And so I think the other thing, though, if there's one other point that I will stomp all over Jeff and put in here, it is this. It's a theme I noticed at Detroit first, and that I really picked up on in small town, and I think that really is evident, especially in Canada. And it's that Jeff shares the stage with people who have never had an opportunity to stand up and tell their story before.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's a big deal.
That's where the power is, right?
There was a moment in Detroit where I realized that the vibe in that room was because no one had asked. No one had asked for their stories before, and people came up and poured their hearts out on that stage.
They did. I mean, that was a remarkable day. I would love to have an opportunity to go back to Detroit. The whole experience there. I got to discover the Midwest. Alan and I drove. We did 3,400 miles the long way from Cleveland to Detroit because we went through 12 states as opposed to 3 hours. And you're right, giving people a chance to have their voice heard. That's what I was trying to say. I hope I don't break down here, but it's because I think the voices matter, and it's I don't care whether the 5 people at the meetup or 150 or 5,000. It's the individual people who you're touching, and the individual people that are talking. And I think that numbers may amplify it. But by doing it, I think the doing is what matters. And so my reason for asking my friends to come on stage and to talk about briefly about their experiences is I do want to see more 140s happen or State of Now events happen. And it could be across vertical markets, whether it's in education or music. It could happen in different geographies. I'm very open about what we do here. My goal is to help touch people's lives. I have been accused of not doing things just for business. I guess I'm guilty of that because sometimes I think things matter more than just for business. I think people matter, and that if you can connect people somehow, we're doing good, and the rest just flows. And I wanted to thank all of you for being here, for sharing your time. And maybe if there's someone in the audience watching wants to do a 140 in their town, do it, please. Just
Nashville
apply.
wants
Just raise your hands if it's killing you that you're wanting to do.
There you go.
All right.
All right. Well,
Pick
Andy,
any one of us up, we would all be happy to share all the information that we've learned, because you don't have to do this from the start by yourself. You've got a whole team behind
Well,
you.
what I offer is the website. I'll offer a website, the clock to keep people honest.
okay, you keep most people honest.
That's true. Yeah, except
Jeff will never pay attention to the clock.
That's true. That's true. It's my
It's
clock.
his clock. That's the problem.
And I want to say for education, just echo what Jeff said earlier. If there are universities or colleges out there, or K-12 schools that want to look at doing a 140 conference, please reach out to us. Reach out to me at Rotolo on Twitter. We'll tell you how we did it. We'll give you either some support, in getting started, because I think it was really a magical event on our campus.
It
You talked
felt
about
great.
the vibe in the room.
Yes.
One student said to me, very brilliantly, I thought, that this room is vibrating at a high frequency. Right?
I love it.
You could feel
Wow.
it.
Wow.
And it's continued. Our 140Qs hashtag is now a community. It's still going, and that was months ago now. So,
Wow,
yeah.
it's awesome. Fairly phenomenal stuff. I mean, this is just part of my life, and so I'm really excited to have a chance to be around such amazing people who care to do this. And there I go again. You see,
I'm not gonna rescue you this time.
what I saw at Syracuse and what I saw in Ontario, they're passionate people who care, because they're active communities, people who are not necessarily paid money, but are sharing their passion. And, I hope one day to find that kind of passion here in New York City. I seem to be the dark sheep here, because I do this anyway, because I live nearby. And it's convenient. I love the stage of the 92nd Street Y. I always want to come back. And I hope next year, tentatively, June 18th and 19th, you're all invited to come back. If I could be moved to do something in Los Angeles again, we'll try it. But really, it's up to you to take this forward if you'd like to. It's an opportunity, because I do think some people, you're doing God's work, and you're just doing something amazing by helping one person get connected. It's pretty heavy stuff, but it's really good.
Can I share one short story, Jeff?
Go ahead.
We had one woman come to the 140 conference, Ontario, last year, who fought with herself for hours before she could walk into the building to just be in the seats where you're all sitting. And so you can imagine the weeks building up to that. She finally convinced herself to get there. She wrote a blog post about it the next day. I cried reading it, about the courage that it took her to get herself just there to watch. So that woman is now, has appeared on the Oprah Network this year. She is speaking all around Ontario in advocacy for her child. And she's going to be appearing at our 140 conference in September as a speaker this year.
Great. Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
That's one life,
Yes.
right?
All right. I'm going to wrap up the conference. I'm going to say thank you all of you for being part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Really.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
our
you.
It's been a pleasure to be a brand ambassador for the 140 State
You
of
always
Now.
be a brand ambassador. Thank you, guys. Really.
Thank you.